Welcome once again to Voyager, Please, a hateful voyage through the Delta Quadrant. My name is Joseph.
My name's Peter.
And we are ready to talk about the last of the Frakes, Peter. The last of the Frakes.
I did not realize that Jonathan Frakes even directed this until 5 minutes ago when I was reading through the cast notes on this.
I noticed it at the beginning of the episode because his name calls out to me as the leader of his cult. Mm-hmm. There it was, our Lord and Savior, Jonathan Frakes. What are we watching this time, Peter?
Season 2, Episode 13, Prototype, wherein the end of Space Muppet Babies, I had to say I felt conflicted because I didn't know if what I watched was good or if I was just predisposed because I knew it was Jonathan Frakes directing it, as I did not find out that Frakes was involved in all of this until we were about to record. I've got some pretty clean opinions, non-biased.
I feel like our hot streak came to an end, but it wasn't like a screeching, terrible halt. It was more of a good idea, bad execution in parts. Some good content, for sure, but just did not come together. And there was just a couple things that just were so fucking head-shakingly stupid that kind of took away from the rest of it.
I'm going to call it a ho-hum, and as only Voyager can produce.
I agree with how you put that. The beginning of the episode, I think, belayed the Frakes' hand because it's probably the coolest and most inventive part. The entire pre-credits teaser is actually done as a POV shot. It reminded me of RoboCop.
Absolutely. All I was waiting for them to do was say something about baby food.
Or OCP. It's done as a POV of something floating in space. We get a POV transporter shot, which was really cool.
Yeah.
We get B'Elanna, Janeway, and Tuvok analyzing whatever got beamed aboard. Tuvok wants it to shut down before Torres analyzes it. Janeway eventually allows Torres to analyze it while still active and try and keep it active.
We need to come up with a clever nickname or something for the reoccurring theme in Voyager of absolutely no fucking personal space. This entire front, and I get it's the POV thing and you're trying to frame people or whatever, but there are so many times in this episode people are just up each other's ass shamelessly, like just cheeks sewn to cheeks. It's out of control.
I didn't mind it as much because it was clearly because of the POV shot and they were all in close looking at the same thing. But there are other more blatant examples when like there's just a big room and there's no reason to be doing this.
Also, if you're just beaming shit out of space, like I don't know if being 3 inches away from it with your own face is the best policy. I think you're kind of inviting some disaster. Things don't go as bad as they could have, but I don't know. Beaming space junk onto Voyager, I don't know if I want to go and rub my nose on it the way that these guys are just digging in there.
It could be radioactive. This space junk could give you space cancer for all you fucking know.
That space truck could have been leaking, carbon monoxide and kill you. It's the silent killer, man.
They run the rest of this POV shot out. It goes to engineering because, of course, if they have something dangerous and new, they want to analyze it next to the warp core. We've established that.
Next to it. This thing could reach off the fucking table and punch a hole in the warp core. It is mind-boggling. Can we name this episode Tuvok is right all over the place?
Sure. The POV shot ends with them jumping it, essentially, with their space jumper cables and repowering it for a while. Whatever we're watching this shot through focuses in essentially on security camera footage of itself because Voyager has security cameras only when it's convenient.
Yeah. What the fuck?
I've ignited a flame.
Come on, Frakes. God damn it.
All of this was in service of some inventive camera work, which is why I liked it. Like, that was an interesting opening. Yeah. And it showed that it was Frakes because he did inventive camera work. He always does.
Yeah.
And the surprise at the end is what they've beamed aboard is a robot man. But not any robot man, Peter. This episode's cardinal sin is obvious from the start. Because what did this robot man look like to you?
A fucking mannequin. It looked like a fourth grader science project of what a piece of shit robot for a low budget movie should look like.
It looked like to me somebody who got a Gimp mask from a fetish store that had a lot of sci-fi stuff in it. You know? That's where my mind went. But like a $25 one though. Like not a good one.
Yeah. Like something that they grabbed out of the fucking bargain bin and like someone had actually pressed the mask. Like it's the reason why it's in there last is because someone had dented the fucking corner of the rigid plastic. These masks look like the shittiest C3PO mask possible because there's like this big crappy bolt seam where the pieces come together. It is unforgivable. As great as Space Muppet Baby looked, as great as Space Muppet Baby's Raptor adult version looked, what the fuck? It was at the cost of having excellent puppets and prosthetics in whatever that episode was, is they had $30 to make a fucking space robot.
Partuition had that adult space raptor for one shot, right?
20 seconds at the most.
And they couldn't put in more effort to making a better robot suit that we basically see on screen for the entire run of this episode. It's the dumbest, hokiest plastic bullshit ever.
If I was anyone related to the production, if I had any juice at all, and they brought this thing into my office and said, all right, we're going to start shooting this tomorrow, and here is this thing that's going to occupy copious amounts of screen time, I would look at him and I would say, scrap this whole fucking episode and we will do a clip show like Next Gen. Chakotay is going to get sick and we're going to just recap the first fucking season and it's going to be terrible. But I cannot, in good conscience, film a fucking episode with something this bad. You might as well have just taken a human and just wrap their fucking face in saran wrap or tinfoil and put them on there, because these prosthetics, I can't even call them prosthetics, man. They're like shit Halloween decorations that have been left out in the yard for fucking 3 years, and someone finally was hitting it with the weed whacker and found that stuff and brought it inside to recycle it. It is just terrible. So let's jump back to the beginning of the episode. Basically what's going on is Voyager's, heading home. They find something in their way that is not a Ford truck. They beam it into the fucking one of the nerve centers. You got the bridge, you got engineering. They beam it in there. And against all common sense, they start working on the space robot. And it's a real fucking head scratcher. I'm going to pull us into the AI debate and all that other stuff as we start talking about this. But, Tuvok lays it all out on the fucking table. This thing is dangerous. We don't know what it is. We're in Star Trek. Next Generation already happened. It's a done deal, okay? The fable of lore is out there. When you're flying through space and you find a fucking robot set adrift, fucked up and damaged, maybe it's out there for a reason. Maybe it's a homicidal killer and the other crew of a ship was barely able to blow it out the fucking space airlock like Jason Voorhees and Jason X. Or, Lore, the psychotic Soong-type android that almost brought the Federation to its knees for all of his crystalline entity dealing. I love Lore, by the way. When I was growing up, Lore was like my favorite fucking Star Trek character. But, evil robots end up adrift in space. Reports got filed on it. That the fucking Pakleds picked this motherfucker up and he subjugated them and then hooked up with the Borg after killing his... No good is going to come out of picking up space trash robot, man. And certainly no good when you bring him into your goddamn nerve center unchecked. There's not even a security detail on this guy. But anyways, so they find this thing, and I get that there's kind of okay, maybe we can get some new sweet technology out of it. Let's bring it in and take a look at it. But Torres just takes this crazy left turn where she starts obsessing over this thing. And Torres, as an engineer, has always felt like a grease monkey, roll your sleeves up and, work on the carburetor, old school person, and not by the way, I have this secret obsession with cybernetics that we never found out until now. Like, I could get Kim getting real crazy,
Right.
like OCD, compulsive about this thing, or like, I don't even, maybe Paris, because he thinks that maybe it could be a fuck bot.
Let me.
And that could,
he comes down to engineering and starts like, judging, its compatibility with different orifices that he's programmed.
I don't
Like,
see a mouth.
where can we go with this? Yeah, like, what can we put in here?
What if they just power this thing up, and maybe the reason it looks so crappy, like someone just pulled it out of a fucking old Sears that was abandoned back in the 60s, is like, and that's just all it is. It's just a mannequin that, like, you turn it on and like poses this way, and then after 40 seconds it rotates so you see the garments it's wearing from a different thing. Or what if it's just a really crappy like hand job bot or a butt sex bot?
I was about to say butt sex bot. How dare you take that from me?
I told you, man, if you had hot takes, you got to outline them at the beginning of the episode, because I'm going to shoot off the hip here too. You don't know what the fuck this thing is. For all you know, it could be anything. At the worst end of the spectrum, a murder bot, or it could just be a slightly animated clothes modeling thing. And B'Elanna just gets fucking crazy obsessive about it.
To expedite our discussion of this episode, because recording this relatively very late and later than we normally do in the evening, because we decided to record half an hour of hot takes on something entirely unrelated to Voyager. I want to discuss in brief the overall theme of the episode. I guess there's two. One that is good, one that is the least subtle, most obvious, and I think biggest detriment to the episode. The one that's good is the idea of not all AI is good. Some AI is bad because of how it gets programmed. And this episode, when it's effective, plays on your sympathy card from Data and from the Doctor, that this is a friendly AI, or that AI deserve our peoples too, and all of that. And this episode abuses that in a way that makes that part of the episode effective. You think this is going to be, a friendly robot man. It turns out that he kind of is a friendly robot man compared to his, sociopathic robot friends. That doesn't make him good. It just makes him less worse than them. And they're all programmed with a sort of subtle limitation in their ability to not be assholes. And it's effectively done. The part of the episode that I think you're hitting on as being particularly shitty and nonsensical in terms of B'Elanna is that this episode takes a bat, it then puts a few nails in it, and then beats you until you die with the, "This is about motherhood." Do you get it? Do you get that this is about motherhood? This is like, my wife is sitting next to me while we watch this. Like, oh my God, how many times are they going to go back to this well about how excited she is to create life? God damn, could they make it any more obvious?
They're doing like the operating table thing, and like B'Elanna's asking for tools. She's like, tricorder, hydrospanner, ovaries, estrogen.
I get it. We all get it. It's back to our ongoing discussion about the effective use of the feminine voice. When this show gets it gets it really well. When we were talking about maneuvers and the fact that B'Elanna and Janeway had a conversation about Chakotay's motivations and emotions that two male characters never could have had, but worked perfectly for them and was really helped that episode and helped you understand all three of those characters better, that's effective. This is another one of those failed, let's make this episode about something that female viewers can identify with, but instead of doing it in a way that's effective, it does it in a way that's ham-handed and forced. And by the end of it, when they're having their fucking rap conversation, is just as subtle as a fucking atom bomb to your genitals. It's terrible.
Yep. So they get this robot, and apparently, again, nobody's ever heard about lore and, the dangers of fucking robots. And Frakes being Riker, like, goddamn, like, do something, some sort of callback. It's cool they mentioned Data a little bit, but, like, you know better than to pick up these space robots. So they get it, and all right, they jumpstart it with, I don't know, some power conduit, but it's not holding up. they need to get this thing self-sufficient. And B'Elanna's racking her brain on how to do it, and everybody's like, "Oh, take a nap," and she's like, "No, I can't. I'm obsessed." There's some shit with Neelix.
There was a good camera shot after that Neelix scene where they're shooting it from the top, from like the top of the warp core. And
yeah, where's everybody else in engineering? It's a ghost town.
It's the late shift, there's a skeleton crew, everyone's sleeping, and you get the idea that she's racking her brain about how to do this and that she's kind of isolated in doing it. They do a good job of framing that through a few different things, but we do learn that salt's the most common spice in the galaxy.
Yeah.
That's interesting. She wakes the doctor up after having a revelation while in bed and starts talking about it in medical terms, that its plasma is contaminated, which is basically that it's contaminated blood, that it needs a transfusion. And she centers on this conclusion with warp plasma and basically changing how the robots, I'm going to call them Gimpy, how Gimpy's power matrix will accept that plasma. So the idea here is basically to provide a plasma transfusion while at the same time rewiring its power core so it can accept the transfusion. So it's like, oh, I don't have compatible blood, so I'm going to rewire your circulatory system so it can take it, which, because its technology can work. I did like that they brought Janeway in to help because she's a scientist.
There's been a few times now where you've had these B'Elanna doctor collaborations, and every time there's like, well, I don't know why you're here. It's like, let's cut to the meat and potatoes. Again, the doctor is grossly underutilized. You got someone who can learn anything in an instant, and he can, unlike the ship's computer, he's got critical thinking and he can reason. Like, what a resource to draw on for anywhere. You could really jam the doctor into any scene for any dilemma anywhere in Voyager, short of like, and even the emotional stuff. I mean, it's a pretty big resource to draw on, and I think it's cool that they're using him more and more consulting in other departments because he is such an amazing thing. But yeah, absolutely. The show has been very good, I think, consistently especially with B'Elanna. They've got that Nancy Drew Venture Brothers, chemistry where they feed off of each other very well. And I'm glad to see her continuing to participate in science experiments alongside B'Elanna and Kim instead of just as a snappy supervisor.
Right. No, I agree with you that's well served in the story. And, they eventually wake Gimpy up. It works. The whole operation is functional. And Gimpy immediately wakes up and thanks B'Elanna for restarting him. But in the very next scene, while B'Elanna is talking more with Gimpy, Gimpy gives off some immediate, potential problematic dialogue about, not understanding how he got fixed and then calling B'Elanna a builder because she was capable of fixing him. And what gets laid out is that these robot people, whoever they are not able to fix their own power systems. B'Elanna's ingenuity in being able to repair them is not something that they have been able to replicate. And they could use B'Elanna's help in trying to further the existence of their race. All kinds of red flags immediately.
He starts talking and laying down his sob story, and maybe I was already predisposed to thinking of this because of all the stuff with lore. But man, it's like pack-led booby trap, Samaritan snare all over again. Like, oh, you are smart. You can make us go. We are stuck. Hey, we got a problem, and you might be able to fix it, and maybe you could help us fix it. Like, it was too close for comfort, retreading old material. But she says, yeah, well, I could theoretically build more of these, but I got to get an okay from my boss. And she goes into what I felt was, until the final scene, probably the worst scene. And it is approaching Janeway on, hey, can I show this dude, or can I help this dude repopulate a species? And Janeway lays down a prime directive no-no speech, which again, I'm immediately just taken out of the scene because she is not a credible authority on fucking, talking about derailing the Delta Quadrant and ethics because of her shit with Caretaker, man.
That is exactly what I paused the episode to tell Stevie. The dialogue they give her in that scene is very effective. It's very good. It's the only problem is I couldn't get out of my head. This is the same woman that basically broke every single, you know, precept that she is now espousing that set the up the show to begin with. Like the original sin of Voyager is Janeway breaking the Prime Directive for the most emotional, spur of the moment, stupid reasons. The fact that nobody ever throws that back in her face when she lectures like this is infuriating to me. She's never called to account by the people that she has stranded in the Delta Quadrant for breaking the Prime Directive when Prime Directive arguments come up.
And B'Elanna gives her a lot of pushback. I mean, that'd be the perfect time for her, not aggressively, just be like, hey, look, you did this thing. I thought I forgave Janeway during one of these episodes. Like, I thought that something happened with the Prime Directive. I said, all right, I moved past it. I haven't. All these fucking feelings just came right back. Like, shut the fuck up. You got no authority, moral high ground, or anything to say jack shit about any of this. I thought this would have been a real good time for B'Elanna and Chakotay to further their confidant relationship, and her to, maybe try and pitch this to Chakotay so they could double team Janeway and Chakotay to shut her down and say, no fucking way. Like, this is a big no-no. And I think Chakotay could speak from a better moral high ground on the Prime Directive than Janeway ever would be able to. Even right off the bat, as soon as B'Elanna starts talking to this robot, I'm like, if this robot is part of a pre-warp society, like they could have, good automatons or whatever, but like if it's pre-warp, this thing should be in quarantine and no contamination or, transmission of information should be taking place at all here.
There's a lot of reasons why Janeway is right in that scene. I think that her dialogue was well delivered and well written, which is comforting. She gave a very authoritative and structured, fantastic reasons why this is a bad idea. It's always just tough to take that argument from her.
Let me jump on your wagon here and sharing in frustrations with the Janeway character specifically because of the writer's room. And I think this is a perfect showcase of you can have good dialogue. You can have a great performance, I think, out of Kate Mulgrew here. Like you said, she does this thing perfectly. And it's a really conveys like, I agree with everything you're saying, but Prime Directive is absolutely right here and we can't move forward. But, again, previous bad Janeway writing from the writer's room has just fucked the character permanently.
I think, if you recall, this may be the very first discussion we ever had about Voyager, that Janeway is a character that is unfortunately defined by the bad writing she has that overshadows the good. This is a perfect example of what I meant by that.
Yep.
To kind of fast forward a bit through some of the more predictable elements, the Gimpy and his people are bad robots, as we have mentioned. Hold on, I have something for us. I'm sure you're shocked. I'm sure everyone is shocked.
As soon as she grabs her arm, like as soon as this thing turns on, it like Snatch grabs her arms. Good robots never just grab people as like the default reaction. It was so blatant from the get-go that this piece of shit robot, maybe that's it. Maybe bad robots are okay to be ugly, but the good robots have to look good. I don't know.
I am bagging on the fact that it was obviously a bad robot a little bit. I will give the show a degree of credit for, at the beginning, really establishing like rapport between Gimpy and B'Elanna, and that they could continue that in a weird way later on. Mm-hmm. Frakes, through the direction, tries to kind of give you an insight to why they have to be careful with this AI stuff. Because, there are some AIs that might not be like mustache twirling supervillains, but also aren't able to turn into something useful.
Let's talk about what these guys are exactly, because we say that they're AI, and I don't know if I want to call them full AI. They're self-aware. They're trying to fix their procreation. So here's their story, right? They were created by a race that died. The organic components died during a war, and they're just kind of a remnant, and they're, for one reason or another, they can't replicate their own power cores. There is no hive collective. Each one has a designation. Each is an individual unto themselves with a different disposition. It's almost like Clone Wars techno union droids, right?
Right.
In Phantom Menace, they blow up the controller ship and they're like, all right, well, each one's going to be their own dude. They get quirky and they talk, and there's no instant communication on radios. It feels sloppy. It feels like they are just hypnotized human beings wearing bad costumes, because I think they've got way too much emotion. They've got way too much personality. And you're like, okay, I'm feeling that this is an android. And they're like, robot moment. And it's jarring, and it comes off as real 50s campy bad.
It seems like almost like a bad episode of The Twilight Zone, in that regard. The campiness of it. Like, it's not fun campy. It's kind of stupid campy.
It would have been cool campy, in The Twilight Zone when people didn't know any better. And I get that, we're talking about shit from the 90s, but I feel that there's, especially with the complexity of the Doctor and all the shit with Data, like, you could have handled these guys better somehow. But they're not evil for the sake of being evil.
They are a limited kind of automaton that, he gives dialogue about how long he's been activated, and Gimpy,
150 years.
Yeah, Gimpy's been up for more than a century, and so what they tried to impress upon you, and I think this is the part of the episode it works, is that these guys weren't meant to have agency, repair themselves, do some of the things they've done, and they've had some capacity to evolve, but they also have limits. And after 150 years, they've become these weird sort of somewhat evolved, but also somewhat arrested in their development, sentient but not fully capable beings that probably shouldn't exist, and definitely shouldn't exist after they lay out that essentially the robots that served this race killed that race when they finally made a peace with their enemy. All of the robots that they were all using to fight each other rebelled against them and terminated all of the biological life forms, Geth style. As a consequence, they're really bad robots.
I would say at its best, the robot plight here is shades of Vidian. It's a tragic turn of events. You feel for them, and they play it well. And even up until the very last moments, you're kind of like, these guys just want to live. And as Voyager has, shown in the past and whatever, and really all of Star Trek is, morals are fine and dandy until push comes to shove and you are staring down the barrel of oblivion. People are always going to choose to do the most drastic thing to try and save the day. And for them, once Gimpy's people show up, it's grab B'Elanna, beam over to the ship, whip the shit out of Voyager, because Voyager starts trying to shoot on them, and they pummel the fuck out of it, which they don't ever even pose to B'Elanna like, hey, either you help us or we're going to kill Voyager. Like, they're clearly okay with just killing Voyager, and B'Elanna has to jump in and say, fine, you didn't even put the offer on the table, but I'll do it if you let him live. Let me just recap how the rest of the episode goes, since the cat's kind of out of the bag at this point. She agrees to help. They're really jerk bosses with her, like, oh, you think you can't do it? Well, you fail. We're just going to kill everybody anyways, which, whatever. Yeah, I get it. You're programming. But she starts making some pretty good strides. And right about the time that Voyager is coming up with their plan to get him back, which is routing a holometer through the main deflector dish so they can start making phantom ships to try and trick this thing, which has way better weapons, by the way. They admit that Voyager's got better engines, but their technology for weapons is way better. A second ship does appear. And right as B'Elanna has cracked the case on the core problem they're dealing with is their power cells have what almost appears to be a intentional design flaw, that you can't take a power cell out of one guy and put in another, right?
Right.
These guys are all carbon copies of each other, except there's like a thumbprint on each piece of hardware, which is really tricky and beyond the limit of programming for these guys to creatively think around. And I thought it was clever. And again, by today's standards, especially in cybersecurity and some of this other stuff, like, it's very clearly not a bug, but a designed intentional feature to have some sort of restraint on these things. In the post-Terminator world, to have some sort of final say over the population on these guys.
I think the only unbelievable part of that is that it took B'Elanna to the very end of the episode to like realize that.
Yeah.
You would think an engineer of her talent and ability and apparent interest in cybernetics would come to the natural conclusion that this quirk for these automatons would seem to preclude their procreation, which was probably the fucking point.
She's clearly never seen Jurassic Park. She didn't know that all the robots on the ship are female, so they can't breed.
Life finds a way, Peter, though. Life finds a way.
Oh, yeah. Life did find a way, and it's Maquis Spitfire that does it. That's this is just kind of like Jurassic Parky. So right as they create the first new generation of these robots, prototype, and it sits up in what is very obviously not emotionally heart-pulling in any capacity. It looks up, it says, prototype 0001 awaiting program, and she looks at it and falls in love, like John Hammond looking at the raptor coming out of the egg, only instead of it being excellent animatronics and CG by Stan Winston, it is little Timmy and his paper plates and fucking silver spray paint looking back up at her. Like literally
push.
A paper plate Santa Claus with cotton swabs glued as a beard across the bottom of the plate is better special effects than these fucking robot, quote unquote, robot men. But this other ship swings in and opens fire. It's the exact same thing. Voyager's like, whoa, what the hell? And it hails them. Oh no, they find out there's no life forms on there. And Janeway's like, oh shit, did I just like wander in the middle of like of a robot civil war? Which, where's Neelix in all of this? Does Neelix not know anything about this fucking tragic story with open warfare robots all over the sector? But these guys get around the horn, and unlike the silver piece of garbage robots, these are gold piece of garbage robots to even more drive home the crappy C-3PO ism of it.
Like, hey, Neelix was too busy cutting B'Elanna off on her coffee.
Yeah,
to be able to inform them about the robot war.
What I will go ahead and give these robots, they're reasonable. They're like, hey, what's up? Who are you? And she's like, oh, we're Voyager. And they're like, all right, well, we're in the middle of a war here. And they're like, yeah, well, we don't want any of that. We just got our crew. And they're just like, well, you stay there and you're fine. Like, it's nice to see some reasonable alien shit going on out there that isn't needlessly dragging other people into it. So I did appreciate that. They fucked the shields up enough that Voyager is able to send out a shuttlecraft to get inside the shields of the main alien flying Death Star thing. I did like Chakotay's line in this, and that was one of the cool development things I thought out of it. They haven't touched on the Chakotay Paris bad blood since Chakotay basically forgave him in Caretaker, right?
Yeah, it was a welcome sudden, return to shitty Chakotay versus Paris. Little snippy dialogue all of a sudden, Jesus, that was just only like 26 episodes ago.
And not only does it pick up on some MI antagonism between Chakotay and his fucking stool pigeon former crew member, Tom Paris, but he also throws a good barb in there about what we've been joking about, and it's losing shuttlecraft all over the fucking place. So it was a twofer.
It was a welcome return. It was a highlight of the episode, which probably tells you overall the feeling that we had about it. But ultimately, as you're saying, the gold robots show up. They fight the silver robots. It becomes clear that, all of these robots killed all of their masters when they finally made peace, and these robots were then going to be shut down. They saw that as aggression against them and decided to kill all of the solids. Janeway and company use the distraction of them fighting to her advantage, of course, to affect B'Elanna's escape, but more importantly, as B'Elanna starts to understand that she has essentially created an imbalance in this situation and also potentially unleashed a somewhat murderous AI robot people on the galaxy, quickly grabs a knife and Roe v. Wade's her robot baby, gets blasted for her trouble, and then beamed out by Tom Paris's slick maneuvers in the shuttle.
Gold star to Tom for some excellent piloting and not crashing a shuttle in this episode.
Yeah, gets the shuttle back safe and sound. Sorry, Chakotay. You have to be shitty another day. The motherhood stuff is just rife throughout. We haven't touched it again because it fucking sucks. And, the decision to kill her robot baby comes with, later on, just this awful ending scene with Janeway.
So 2 things I want to talk about. What was the last episode we watched?
The last episode we watched, that was the New Jack Neelix.
New Jack Neelix. So the one previous to that, Seska Burn Queen. Yet again, we've got fucking people commandeering the transporter, beaming off the ship, and here we go again. Tuvok, dude, pull your head out of your ass. I don't know what they need to do on this fucking ship, but it's just anybody who comes on is going to instantly have full run of the transporters. Lock these bitches down.
I mean, it seemed like he was robot hacking it, so I get it. It was not like he had access. He was like fighting the computer to be able to do what he wanted. But he's a robot, so I get it.
This robot just running around fucking engineering, like, odds are this thing records. It's got like its robot eidetic memory, like having it in the nerve center of all your fucking fantastic Federation technology when you just talked about what a big deal transporter is. Like, you don't know if this robot's got warp. You don't know if this robot's got transporter. Like, giving it free run of the fucking ship so it can bring all its shit back. Like, there's prime directive issues all over this motherfucker. This should have been a one-way ticket. This robot's coming on the ship busted. It's staying here forever. It's part of the Voyager crew now. Fucking deal with it. The other thing, when B'Elanna's over there, like, she gives an estimate. Oh, it's however long it's going to take for Voyager to fix. That's the window that B'Elanna has to come up with a solution to this this intentional design flaw, right? And it's like, what, 60 hours or something, like 6 days?
It's 120 some hours, so it's at least 6 days.
I want to draw a picture here, and you can connect the dots. Robot ship, right?
Right.
That is staffed by a robot crew.
Right.
For only robots.
Right.
Human Klingon hybrid.
Right.
Over there for potentially days.
You're gonna ask where the shitter is, right?
Yes. Where the poo-poos go.
That's all I can think of too. Is like, is she gonna where's some place to sleep? Where's she gonna piss? Like, do you have food? Like, Jesus, you have water? She's gonna die.
Yeah. You can have some of this hydraulic fluid and I don't know, this cable kind of has a soft texture to the outer, so maybe you can bite through that, or like, they didn't really think that out well. But let me see what else we got to salvage here. A question. They circle back, the robot Gimpy, he circles back a few times and says basically, you have some dynamic quality to you that I cannot replicate. This spark of inspiration that is beyond our programming, and that's why we were not able to finish this ourselves. There's just something about you that we can never hope to emulate. And she repeats herself and says, "Oh, I've shown you the way now." And do you think that they would have let her go ultimately, or that they were going to Samaritan snare her ass and be like, yeah, we're going to blow your ship up anyways, or just tell your ship to fuck off. You're ours now, and you're going to be our slave builder until you die? I
think that's the likely answer, based on the fact that these guys were obviously completely sociopathic. They had no emotions, and they didn't give a shit. The one that B'Elanna ran into felt gratitude, specifically because she helped him. But unless, like, they have that personal connection, I guess they don't quite grasp not being a dick. Because, again, their programming is this awkward limitation, which I liked, that they were growing into something more than what they were programmed to be, but were still confined by what they were programmed to do. It's a tough line to walk, and what you see kind of walks it. It's just that it was in service to a plot that was otherwise middling to shitty, and therefore it didn't work.
I think towards the end there was a very clear menacing undertone, again, with her enthusiasm and her celebratory nature of what they had done, and the robot was just kind of real, where it had been emotional inflection before. I think they were going to keep her. I think that was going to be a no-win for her, and that she was looking at a life of slavery there.
Quite possible.
I just want to throw in, they fit Kes in at the very fucking end of this episode. Like
It
how we
did.
joked in what was it, Hollow Pursuits, how Kim got in like the last scene and they made him put all that fucking armor on for like three words in a sentence or something. Right? That was Kest this episode.
It was. It was. Hey, by the way, we haven't had her on in a while. We got to make sure she's serving coffee so that Jennifer Link gets her fucking paycheck.
Yeah.
It
Yeah,
was.
and that's all she was, is like a waiter. Do you think that now that Torres has been like like neck deep in building these robots, shouldn't she be able to come back to Voyager with some sort of ability to say, hey, look, we could build automatons if we want. I just built one of these. It's not going to be as, complex AI as that other one, but like I can build this fucking robot now. We can have robot crew dudes going into radiated decks to fix things, hazard teams for repair or whatever else. Because again, your greatest limited commodity on Voyager is your crew. Well, theoretically, I mean, you could pick people up along the way. Again, I think it would have been a cool chance to, not that these fucking costumes are worth reusing, but
Maybe that's the reason why she doesn't, because she's like, it's not worth it. I don't want to be surrounded by these guys in these Gimp masks. I mean, it's gonna give me it's gonna give engineering a weird vibe. We don't need that kind of vibe, so we're not gonna do it. I can only make gimpy, lifeless dinner plate, shitty knockoffs from the Twilight Zone robots, so we can't make robots. Can't do it. And Janeway's probably in support of that. Like, no, I don't want this around. It's gonna just leer at me, and we don't know what that was programmed for. They could just like lurk into Harry Kim's quarters at night because Tom Paris proved that's easy, and they're butt sex robots. And and Harry has a bad time. It could be. You never know. You don't know what you're getting yourself into. So I support not making more dangerous butt sex robots in the Delta Quadrant.
The ending, if we cut out all the coloring book specific, hey, by the way, this is a motherhood episode, they dip out on this robot battle. They don't show you what happens. Like as soon as Voyager clears her off on the Tom Paris shuttle, they dip, and these robots are too busy in their basic programming. They can't prioritize, hey, get this person who's going to give us longevity. They go away. You don't know what happens. And I already know the answer to this. I'm not even going to ask you if we ever fucking see these guys again. But I think this is another opportunity. These robots not look like complete shit. It's another fucking enemy that Voyager's just made. Like this should be if Silver robots win this fight, they should go back to the remaining Silver robots and be like, look, we had longevity. We had the key to our survival, and it is on Voyager, and we need to hunt this fucking ship down at all costs. Get on Next Door, shit talk these dudes as hard as you can. Let's find them, put an APB out on them, and you could add another good thing pop up later in the series, but I'm going to assume we never hear from these guys again.
Of course we don't. This is Voyager, my friend.
I do have one thing I want to say, and maybe we should roll this into the discussion for the live cast. But so we're going to call this a bottle episode, essentially.
Yeah, that's common in Star Trek Voyager for sure.
Voyager is a show that has goals baked in. There's a victory condition, and that is get back to the Alpha Quadrant. I think that I would be much more forgiving of these episodes if there was like this Mass Effect war effort, right? Like, hey, we're at 50% or whatever. And hey, we encountered these new robot people, and we lost some energy and it set us down to 45%. But we got new technology out of it that makes our engines a little bit faster, sensors a little bit better. You got a before, beginning of the episode and end of the episode, like here's where our effectiveness is. And it was a metric that moved between episodes. And you could have bullshit bottle episodes like this that just don't matter in the grand scape of things, but just show that it had some sort of impact one way or another that carries into the next episode. And I would be much more accepting of them, and that everything wasn't just okay, and now we're done. Like, I don't know. We can talk about it more later.
No, I think you actually will be pleased when you read the description for the next episode. Why don't you give it a read?
All right. Next, Alliances. That's going to be season 2, episode 14. I got a Kazon pointing one of his pipe gun rifles out of Fallout 4. Janeway tries to make an alliance with a Kazon sect for their own protection, and so they can continue their journey through the Delta Quadrant.
Who do you think's going to make a reappearance, Peter?
Would it be the Queen of Burns?
It would be the Queen of Burns. And some long-term consequences and continuity of choices. All that stuff basically you just said. You about to get it, son.
Well, I'm down for that, man. Count me in.
Indeed. All right, folks. I think we can safely say that this hateful voyage is back on track.
Sadly.
And Jonathan, you're my god still, my hairy Greek god, but you kind of swung and hit a foul tip into the catcher's mitt on this one.
There was
man.
pulling this thing up the fucking trash. But this could have been amazing acting all over the place, and these fucking stupid Halloween costume off the fucking rack costumes. I think someone at Paramount just doesn't like him and wanted to fucking just give him as many turkeys as possible, and this is the one he couldn't fucking salvage.
It was the last episode of Star Trek he directed until, well, if you count Discovery. So, Interesting note. He was done with Star Trek for a long time after this. But hey, we always got Muppet Baby reptiles and projections to remember him fondly.
So, in the end, the moral of the story is don't create a robot species you're going to use for war, because when you declare peace, they're going to figure out that means they're going back in the closet. They might be down with that, and you're the enemy. So, Ferengi Rule of Acquisition 35. Peace is good for business.
It always is. And nostalgia is good for business too, as we found out this week.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
All right. So until next time, this is Voyager, please. A hateful voyage through the Delta Quadrant. My name is Joseph.
I'm Peter.
And thank you once again to Ian and Sarah for the lovely theme music you're hearing right now. Please like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, subscribe to us on YouTube, find us anywhere fine podcasting is found, and always you can email us at voyagerplease@gmail.com. See you next time.